One of the people that I asked to call into the show, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk to him, is Barry Hinckley. And Barry Hinckley is a gentleman who's running for U.S. Senate. He's running as a Republican. He's a good guy, and I wanted to bring him on air to give him an opportunity to talk to you. Barry, you're on the Matt Allen Show with Rep Trillo. It's nice to have you on the line.
It's good to be here, Joe.
Barry, you know, there are some people, I'm sure, that aren't familiar with who you are. Can you give me a little background about who Barry Hinckley is?
Well, I'm a guy that started his career in the marine industry in 1991 down in Newport, and I grew up in a manufacturing family. My family built boats called Hinckley boats for a couple generations, and I was unfortunately I got driven out of that industry by a tough economy when the luxury tax. I'm not sure if you recall the luxury tax of the early 90s. It really hammered the boat building industry here in Rhode Island, and I ended up leaving the industry because there was no more boats to build, and I founded a software company a few years later, 1999, and built that company, Bullhorn, into one of the largest companies in its space in the world. In fact, we make employment software that puts people to work all over the country and all over the world. Mm-hmm. And I retired from that about 2 years ago, and decided that my talents would be well put to use, helping Rhode Island get back on its feet economically, because I've created hundreds of jobs in the private sector. I grew up in a family that's made things for decades and decades and decades here in New England, and I think, as one of your callers said earlier, we need to make more things, and I know for sure we need a lot more jobs. So I'm going to put those talents to work here, and I'm running for U.S. Senate to hopefully help turn Rhode Island around.
So you entered the field of politics now, and you're off and running with a campaign. You're running against Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, correct?
I am, indeed.
And tell me, what would you say one of the key issues are that you're the most concerned about? I know it's jobs, but what would you propose? How would you think that we could stimulate the economy with jobs? Well,
I rode my bike, as you know, through all 39 cities and towns this summer, about almost 400 miles, speaking with voters and business owners all along the way. And, of course, we know what people need here. They need jobs. And if it's not only the first job that so many people are looking for, but a lot of people are stuck in dead-end jobs. We need a more vibrant economy where we have not only more jobs but more job choices, that's for sure. So the fundamental argument between Sheldon Whitehouse and I is who creates those jobs. Now, Sheldon Whitehouse is running on a platform of more government. He thinks if we raise taxes and we funnel more money through the federal government, we will somehow magically create more jobs. Well, that doesn't work. That's not how jobs are created. And my message is we need to downsize the government, and we need to get the government off the back of job creators. We need a government that can live within its means, that doesn't keep kicking the can down the road to our children. I have two kids, 12 and 5, and I keep asking these career politicians that I meet along the way in Washington and other places. I go, you are spending over $1 trillion more than we bring in every single year. Who is going to pay it back? And no one will look me in the eye and answer me. And you and I know it's our kids. So we need the government to be smaller, to live within its means, and we need to, totally reshape our tax code and get the government out of the business of over-regulating employment. And that'll get us back on track and creating jobs again.
Barry, the government right now takes in, I don't have the exact number, like I'm going to give you a guesstimate, $2.6 trillion a year, but it spends... Right. It spends $1.65 trillion more every year than it takes in.
It's shameful. It's really shameful.
What do you think about that, and what could be done to cut that back? I mean, we're almost spending twice as much as we're taking in.
And the real question is how do you pay it back? $1 trillion is not an insignificant sum. I mean, just to put it into perspective for the listeners, 1 trillion seconds, 1 trillion seconds. So if we take and use a time metaphor, is almost 32,000 years. If you take dollar bills and stack them flat on top of each other, the stack of dollar bills, $1 trillion, wraps around the Earth 2.5 times at 67,000 miles. Scope of the yearly problem is massive. And what we did in Rhode Island last year, I'm already talking in 2011 terms, this year, with taking the first step in pension reform, was solving or taking a step towards solving an unfunded liability problem. And I know you took part in that and you know how important it is. Our federal government can't even address the annual problem, let alone the unfunded liabilities we have. So we have a lot of work to do.
One of the big problems that we have, besides overspending, is I think we have an immigration problem. I think we have open borders, and basically, this administration, the Obama administration, has been turning their backs on controlling immigration. And I can tell you that, tomorrow night's program is going to be on immigration, and I have audio from testimony from the president of the ICE agents all over the country before Congress, before the House Judiciary Committee, basically saying that Janet Napolitano told the ICE agents to no longer deport people that are arrested for crossing the border. I mean, is this insane? Where are we going with this stuff?
It's crazy. I mean, and you saw Obama's hometown of Cook County, Illinois, is now refusing to turn over that illegal alien and suspected criminal to the ICE. So they're not even collaborating at a county level. I mean, illegal immigration is a massive problem, and our government is looking the other way. And I think it's poignant to point out that this week there's a lot of news around North Korea, obviously, but we've done a pretty good job of protecting South Korea's border for the last 50 years. Why can't we protect our own?
I agree. It doesn't look like we want to protect it. I mean, the president has pulled off our border 1,600 plus National Guard troops that were helping the Border Patrol. I mean, That's the kind of insanity that's going on in this country right now. It's like, and
they've almost made it like it's naughty to talk about enforcing our own immigration laws, like somehow you're some kind of cool person. We have immigration laws for a reason. I mean, there's 4 or 5 million people waiting in line honestly to get here. So we can't be in the business of rewarding people that broke in.
I agree with you. And hopefully, when you get in Congress, you can help strengthen some of these immigration laws.
Well, we have to. I mean, that's what you pointed out, Joe, in the first few minutes here, is that unfortunately, everything our federal government touches, it seems to screw up. There's really no good news coming out of Washington, and every program that they're running is not viable anymore. I mean, the trustees of Social Security tell you it goes insolvent in 2036, which for a guy like me, that happens to be the year I'll be 70 years old. I'll have paid into Social Security for 49 years, 12.4% of my income, which is a lot of money over 49 years. And they're telling me all today that I'm going to get nothing. And they're not doing anything about that. I mean, Medicare goes broke in 8.5 years, maybe sooner, with the recession now. Our education system, we're 25 out of 32 industrialized nations. And let me tell you, that has a huge impact on our economy because we're not educating our youth to the degree that our competitors are. Everything our government touches, they seem to spoil. And we've got a lot of work to do to get down there, and we need new faces to do it because at the end of the day, Joe, the people that broke it are incapable of fixing it.
Yeah, I agree with you. So how is the campaign going? One of the big things that's important is raising money. How is the fundraising going?
It's going really, really well. We're having another good quarter. Well, of course, it ends in a few days, and it's always a touch. It's never a boom quarter in the fourth quarter because, of course, you're competing with a lot of annual giving that people do to their charities, and you're competing with Christmas and the other holidays, Hanukkah and such, where there's a lot of giving. So you never have a blockbuster quarter in the fourth quarter, but then again, we're going to have a very strong quarter. We've got plenty of money in the bank. We've got a great team, and I've been traveling around the country meeting leaders of the Republican Party. I'm down in Florida right now, actually. I just met with a couple of the regents of the RNC, and they're starting to step up and help me out on a national fundraising level, which is really, really key. Because, as you know, I'm competing against Sheldon Whitehouse, who, just like Jack Reed, raises about 75% of his money out of state, and we have to match that to compete, and it looks like we'll be able to do that.
Have you looked at his campaign finance reports to see where he gets most of his money?
Yeah, he gets it from, I think, trial lawyers are the number one that he gets it from. And then, of course, Unfortunately, and this goes back to one of the first things we touched on, which is our tax code and the need to reform our tax code. K Street in Washington, D.C., and the lobbyists will give a lot of money to sitting senators so they can get access, so they can get special provisions baked into the tax code for their customers. And that's how Washington does business. And that's why we need to change the tax code and get the money, the dirty money, out of politics when this is pay for play. You give someone the max donation, and then all of a sudden you get a meeting with a senator and you talk about a little carve out in the tax code for you. That needs to end. And
I think a lot of Washington has been bought and paid for.
Oh, you got that right. And the problem is, what you see in Washington right now, Joe, is people fighting over money. It's a deadlock because no one will give an inch. And the problem is all these powerful people are fighting over money, and not one of them will give an inch. So over and over again, they kick the can to they send the bill to the only people that aren't at the table, and those are our children. And that's just shameful. Our kids don't have a seat at the table, and they're getting handed the bill.
Yeah, I agree. On the issue of we just pulled out of Iraq, Barry, I don't know if you have an opinion on this. How do you think this was a wise move? I mean, we lost a lot of lives there. We spent billions of dollars there. Do you think that the country was ready to pull out?
Well, it really seems to me like, we had billions, 800 billion, I think is really the number. It's close to $1 trillion, which, as we know, is a big number. And that's a big investment of American hardworking taxpayer dollars. And, of course, we know a lot of that is now on top of our children's backs in the form of debt. It certainly seems to me like we hurried out the door. Whether you agree or disagree about why we were in there or should we have been there, there's a huge American investment there that seemed to be going pretty well in the last couple of years as things stabilized. And it really seems to me that we rushed out the door, which makes the whole thing certainly vulnerable to the influence of Iran and other neighbors that, as you and I know, aren't very friendly.
And, we rushed out the door, and the first thing that the president said was he kept his campaign promise. And he did. He kept his campaign promise. I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense for somebody to run for office. And Sheldon Whitehouse did this too. When Sheldon Whitehouse ran for Senate, he said, if I'm elected, I'm going to get people out of Iraq within, I think it was a year or 6 months or something like that, which there was no way he was going to be able to do that in the first place. But he did make that statement. As a matter of fact, you should probably go and look for that footage because it took years to get the people out. But my question to you is, does it make any sense to you as a guy who's running for Senate, for the president, or for a U.S. senator to say, if you elect me, I'm going to end the war on a specific date?
Over and over again, American politicians have done this. LBJ was famous for it, saying we're to end the war in Vietnam on a certain date. And what happened is more lives were lost. I mean, when you're at war with someone, there's an element of secrecy that's very important from the leadership level. And if you want to embolden your enemy, certainly fill them in on your tactics, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I certainly don't think it's good to, tip your tactics to the enemy and let them know when you'll be exiting, because all this, action that's now we're seeing, the bombings and now the saber rattling by Iran, it's not an accident. We told them we're leaving, we hurried out the door, and here it goes again.
Right. And it doesn't make sense. It's almost as stupid as going public with a plan that you might have for an attack in a given area. Barry, I'm going to hold you there. Can you hold on for a couple of seconds? We got to go into a quick break. This is the Matt Allen Show, and I'm State Representative Joe Trillo filling in for Matt. Barry, we were talking about a bunch of stuff concerning your run for the U.S. Senate seat that's currently held by Sheldon Whitehouse. And one of the questions I have for you is, this year I think the Republican Party is going to be looking to try to take over the Senate. And have you met yet or got any calls into the National Republican Senate Committee?
Sure, I've met with them back in May, and I'm in regular communication with them. And my media team collaborates with them weekly on whether it's research issues or press issues. So we're in actually close contact with them. I have a really good relationship we've built over the last 10 months.
Because I think they could be a tremendous asset for you. There's no question about it. If you, if you use them the way they should be used, especially in an election cycle like we have coming up.
Yeah, they'll be very, very helpful. Certainly, you nailed it, Joe. There's a large movement in the country right now to take the Senate back and put it in the Republicans' hands because people see it. If you look at what's happening in the U.S. Senate right now, of course, there's a lot of finger pointing on the blame of the gridlock down there. But the reality is the House has passed, I think it's 27, maybe it's more, bills, job creation, regulation cutting bills to get the economy going again. The House has passed that because, as you know, legislation starts in the House. Harry Reid has refused to even vote on them. Like, how do you move the ball forward if you can't even let a bill have a day in court, so to speak? I mean, you're in the legislature. You know how it works. I mean, you have to be able to play ping pong here to get anything done.
No, you're absolutely
right. There's a total roadblock being by Harry Reid and the Democrats right now. So we really must take the Senate back to get anything done.
You're absolutely right. Listen, Barry, we're running short on time. I just want to thank you so much for calling in tonight. I wish you well with your Senate race, and I look forward to hearing from you on these issues in the future. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure, Joe. Happy New Year, everyone.
You too.